All right, let's turn our attention now from and all these issues that we're looking at to that of farm evictions. They still remain rife in Mkondo, this despite several attempts by government to address the problem. But it's not all doom and gloom. Some farm owners are helping improve the lives of farm workers. Take a look at this.
Mtembeni Mndebele has been staying on this farm for more than 10 years, but now residing here is becoming more and more difficult for him. Mndebele and other residents are constantly receiving eviction threats, allegedly from farm owners. Recently, his house was demolished without a legal order.
I was preparing to go to work. I saw some cars arriving here, including police vehicles. They started demolishing my house without even talking to me. I asked why they were doing that. They said it's an order from the court.
The local municipality says such incidents are all too familiar in Mkondo.
Currently, yes, there are some sporadic evictions there and there, and people are being victimized there and there, but we are talking with these people.
The provincial government established a commission of inquiry to investigate living conditions of farm dwellers. A report on the findings is yet to be released. Though there is a high number of incidents of farm abuse in this area, some farmers are making a point that they contribute in improving the lives of farm dwellers. Kat Paul, an owner of a forestry farm just outside Piet Retief, is one of the farmers changing the lives of farm dwellers for the better. He has availed 650 hectares of his land to be used by about 90 families for farming purposes. Paul has also equipped the farm dwellers with farming skills that have resulted in higher yields.
We're trying to create an agri-village where people can try and sustain themselves. And we have allocated 500 hectares of land to those 75 families, and we have allocated another 150 hectares to our existing 15 families.
Paul has also forked out funds from his pocket. He invested in a water project that is now benefiting about 700 farm dwellers. His act of kindness has earned him respect from people living on his farm.
I love him. He has brought some life to us. We now have food, water, and we will soon be having electricity, something that we were never going to get.
Kat Paul has challenged other farm owners to make a contribution in improving the lives of farm dwellers. Mweli Maslela, SABC News, in Mkondo, Mpumalanga.
All right, let's now talk about people with disabilities living in these particular areas. And let's look at one particular individual, Dutoit Nkambule, who is living with a disability, and he's also an official at the Department of Social Services. He's basically going to be talking to us about the difficulties that people are living with a disability and how they get around and live a normal life out in these particular areas and how they are accommodated. Dutoit, thank you so much for talking to us and welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me in the program.
Some of the challenges, I mean, we know living in big cities, people with disabilities still talk about the fact that the facilities are not good enough for them. Living out here in somewhere like the Mkondo municipality, how well do you get about? How are lives for people with disabilities?
You see, people with disabilities have got a lot of problems. We are coming from a very painful past. But after the elections with the new government, there was a meeting between the Disability Formation and government to say we now need to recognize people with disabilities, but we mostly have to think of the human rights. Disability must no longer be a social issue. I mean, a medical issue, but it must be recognized as a social issue. So now that means respecting people with disabilities, providing them with services that they want, and also giving them the rights as all the human beings in the country. So now that work goes to the number of issues. When we say we are recognizing the rights of people with disabilities, it ranges from giving people with disabilities employment, having people with disabilities going to school, and then accessing information, having access to infrastructure like you have said. Now what we're doing is that we have got a program in the Department of Social Development, where we visit all the municipalities, all the 18 municipalities, to check if the buildings, the infrastructure, is accessible for persons with disabilities. If we find a building that is not accessible, we are writing a report and submit to the relevant department to say, please fix that infrastructure so that people with disabilities will have access to infrastructure and all the other services that are available.
So having a look here where you stay, where you are based, the infrastructure, the ability for people with disabilities to move around and get around freely, to work, to go to schools, how is it?
Well, it might not be so good because you see this place is almost in a rural area. Yeah. It might not be so good. If you look at the road, people who are using wheelchairs, they still struggle. And then people who are using the transport system are still struggling. But we are talking to all these relevant structures, your taxi industries. We have had meeting with them to say, please, you must make sure that you understand disability, you know how to transport people with disabilities to and from work. Children with disabilities who go to school must have access to transport. So we are talking to all these departments to say, every now and then, on a quarterly basis, we are monitoring the department to see if they are able to provide that service to people with disabilities.
With so many issues facing communities like this and areas like this municipality, do you think that disability, particularly when it comes to rural areas and areas like this that need so much, do you even think people with disabilities are on the radar? Is enough being done? Are they being addressed at all? Or is it people like you that go out there and fight for the rights and the needs of people with disabilities?
I think that there's some progress. If you look where we're coming from, people with disabilities used to be put behind doors, locked in the houses, etc. But I think with the awareness campaign that we are doing as a province, we are able to reach out to people with disabilities because, look, we have got now structures in place that works directly with people with disabilities. We have got organizations of people with disabilities in the province. We have got foot soldiers who are directly working with people with disabilities in each local municipalities. Now they are able to take those issues up with the local municipalities, bring them to the province and see how we can find solutions for that. So I think there is some progress because now we have moved away from hiding people with disabilities, denying them the rights to education, denying them the right to services. Of course, it's not enough, but there's still a lot of work to be done. But I think that as a government, as the province of Mpumalanga, we need to move with speed with all the structures that are in place. Now we need to move with speed to make sure that the people with disabilities have access to all these services.
A nice way of looking at it. Just finally, from a perspective of living in this community, and when it comes to service delivery, when it comes to the management of this municipality, how is it? How do you feel as a person living here and speaking to some of your other friends and family that do live here as well?
Yes, sometimes I pay a visit to all the municipalities as part of my monitoring roles. And sometimes I interact directly with people with disabilities themselves. I think at some point we need to find a way of addressing these issues once and for all, because I think what is giving a problem is the whole issue of an attitude. People have got attitude towards disabilities. People's mindset need to be changed towards these issues. Disability, my view is that disability belongs to all of us. It's not me who is disabled alone, but everybody, collectively, we need to work together. As I've said to you, the structures that have been put in place in the province in particular, the officials, ourselves, and everybody must be on board to say we need to fix the environment because tomorrow is somebody else who is disabled. Disability comes at any time. It does not wait for any period. So when you are disabled now, you'll need this service. So we better prepare the ground now and make disability an issue for everybody, so that when we provide services, when any government department goes to this community to say, we are going to build houses, for example, here, they must make sure that some of these houses are allocated to persons with disabilities. Any services of government that comes to this area must be mainstreaming issues of persons with disabilities. When we talk of schooling, education, when there is a school that is going to be built here, the school must be able to accommodate people with disabilities. It's not difficult, just to put few ramps and few things. The issue also that is a problem, the issue of deaf people, sign language, We have got a lot of deaf people who have no access to information. We need to go into that space and say, look, our people need to understand at least the basic sign language skills so that we can communicate.
Absolutely. I mean, these are things that, these are lessons that need to be learnt and spread through the whole of South Africa, whether you talk about cities or rural areas as well. Dutoit, thank you for talking to us. Dutoit Nkambule, he's talking on behalf of disabled people of South Africa, and he's also an official of the Department of Social Services. All right, it's time now to get you another weather update just to find out what all right, there goes Dutoit. There we go. Right, okay, got you out my shot. Thanks, Dutoit. Take care of yourself. It's nothing nicer when the guest walks through your camera and you have to sort of duck and dive and try and look there. Phil, you've got nothing to worry about. We don't walk in front of your camera. When we do, then there's drama. In fact, I think every presenter's had a chance of walking in front of the weatherboard, and it's one of the worst feelings. I did that on one of my first weeks, I think, on Morning Live. So, yeah, you get used to it eventually. Anyway, look at the scenery that we got here, and I got some good news to report. It's warming up a little bit. I got the sun on my back, so I'm feeling a lot warmer, Phil. I have to tell you, it's great. Oh, my gosh, I'm having a fat conversation with Phil, and we're not even getting a weather update. We're taking a break. All right, let's take a break. Phil will give us a weather update a bit later. The news at 8 after this. Stay tuned to Morning Live.